Okay, should be the last thing. So if I've got something like this, gave me a nice graph, and I'm supposed to write the equation. So on one hand, you're thinking, I'm supposed to write a sine and a cosine equation. And somebody says there could be an infinite number of answers. I agree. There could be. I'm just going to come up with what would, be what I would consider the most straightforward. First thing somebody says is, well, it's got a max at 5 and a min at -1. What's halfway between 5 and -1? Dang, I don't know. I get so confused. Oh, 2 is halfway between 5 and -1. So y is equal to 2 becomes the center line. So if y is equal to 2 becomes the center line, from 2 to 5 is 3 spaces. From 2 to -1 is 3 spaces. So that immediately tells me the amplitude is 3. So I know my center line is y equals 2, my displacement, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And then with a cosine curve, you can pick any one of these maxes or mins as your starting point. With your sine curve, you can pick any one of these intermediate points as your starting point. The one trick here is going to be figuring the period. That's going to be the only trick on a problem like this. So, or okay, I shouldn't say it like that, but you think to yourself, one period would be, and for sine and cosine, the periods are going to be the same. Because if I said, well, like from pi over 12 over here to 7 pi over 12, from pi over 12 to 7 pi over 12, well, that would be 6 pi over 12 spaces, which is pi over 2. So I claim the period's going to be pi over 2. That's what I claim the period's going to be. Then somebody yells at me and says, no way, you did it like a cosine curve. All right. Somebody else says, I'm going to do it like I just did it like it's a sine curve. Somebody else says, well, I'm going to do it like it's a cosine curve. So cosine curve, like start at the max. So if I start at 5 pi over 24, start at the max, down to the min, end at the max. Okay. So from 5 pi over 24 to 17 pi over 24, that would be 12 pi over 24 space. Wait a second. It's still pi over 2. The distance from 17 pi over 24 to 5 pi over 24 is still 12 pi over 24 spaces, which is pi over 2. So the period is definitely pi over 2. There is no doubt about that. So if the period's pi over 2, okay, the period is pi over 2, and we know the period is 2 pi over b. So the period's pi over 2, and we know that that's 2 pi over b. What do we end up with here? What's b? So let me see. We get b is equal to 4. So there you go. B is equal to 4. So let's see if we can put this all together. Let's do a sine curve first. So one person says, all right, A is going to be 3. One person says, all right, I'm going to choose that point right there in the center to be my starting point. Okay, far out. That point right there in the center, we already decided B was 4. So that point right there in the center is positive pi over 3. So positive pi over 3. So I got to make that negative pi over 3 in there, plus 2 on the end. Except, wait a second, if I choose that point, it's going down to the right. Then I got to put a negative out front. So somebody else says, no way, I didn't like that. I'm going to choose this got to be my starting point because that way it'll be positive. It'll be going up. Okay, far out. If that's what you want to do, so these are both perfectly legitimate problems, and we could do this on and on and on and on and on. We could come up with, like I said, an infinite number of answers. The cosines might look a little bit goofier. Somebody says, well, it's still going to be 3 in front, and the period is still going to be 4. But if I choose that to be my starting point, right there, if that's my starting point, so that would be x minus 5 pi over 4, 24. You say, well, it started at the max, so stays positive in front. And I know somebody's contrary. No, I'm going to do it different. Somebody says, I want to choose that to be my starting point. Okay, let's do it then. Let me see. That's positive 11 pi, so it'd be 11 pi over 24 right here, plus 2, but wait a second. If I started at the min, I got to put a negative out front. If I start at the min, so there you go. Multiple answers. Now, when we take a test on this, we're going to give you a problem and we're going to say something like write a sine curve for this, or write a cosine curve for this. You're not going to have to write multiple answers like this. And then somebody says, well, what if I write one thing and you wrote another? This is one of those cases where I have to have multiple answers on my answer key. So I would have like a couple of answers that I think most people would come up with. And then if somebody had something completely different, I would have to check it and make sure it's correct. And then I would add it to my answer key. So yes, there are multiple answers. Also, with the work backwards problems, we're only going to do sine and cosine. So for work backwards, we will only do sine and cosine. All right.